it concerns me, and it should concern you as well, that the same week that in America, Donald Trump is causing the biggest constitutional crisis in American history since the U.S. Civil War by ignoring the Supreme Court, ignoring the Constitution, and ignoring all semblance of respect for human rights and civil rights and dignity, and doing it because he thinks he's doing the right thing and he's going to protect people. That's his basis for doing it. That same week, we have Pierre Poilievre in Canada claiming that he is going to overrule our Charter of Rights and Freedoms to do what he thinks is right. Now, that's something we have to talk about. I'm not suggesting, not for a moment, that Pierre Poilievre is considering rounding up hundreds of Canadians and deporting them to a foreign gulag without charges, without trial, without any due process. That's ridiculous to even suggest that. After all, we have a Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms that would stop them from doing that and protects us from that kind of thing. Wait a minute. He's talking about overruling that because he thinks there are cases and situations where it's not that important. There is a critically important aspect we have to talk about right here. Constitutions, bills of rights, charters of freedoms were not written and passed to make life easier for politicians. They also weren't done for the benefit of criminals. They were done specifically and implemented to protect citizens, us, from our governments, from our politicians, to guarantee that no matter who was elected, there were certain things they could not do to us. And that is something that should never be taken lightly. Let's stand back and look at this issue in some depth to understand what it means to us and whether it is indeed a threat to our freedoms and liberties or not. First of all, we've all got to understand and concede the primary purpose of government, maybe its prime function, is to protect individuals, their property, their safety, and their families from harm or threat. That's fundamental to why we have governments. So yeah, it's fair play that during an election campaign, law and order are an issue and it's talked about. But I have great concerns when politicians try to exploit that function of government, law and order, in order to create fear in people, anxiety, create crises that may or may not exist for the sole purpose of getting votes, politicizing this function of government to protect us. If you look at what Poilievre is doing, that is what he's doing. He is not concerned with law and order. He is concerned with scoring points and getting votes. You can look back throughout history and really all around the world to find countless examples of leaders, rulers, generally speaking, tough guys, strong men, who have used fear and anxiety and a call for law and order to take away liberties and freedoms from people and to increase their power. You know, I think it was American Benjamin Franklin who said, when people give up their rights for safety, they end up with neither. And that's what history has taught us time and again. And it's a really fine line. Once they've shown that they can break that rule, that they can change it and pass whatever law they want to, it's always a slippery slope. It doesn't get better, it gets worse. Because today, it may be the most extreme criminal. Mass murderers we want to put in prison for a longer time than the Constitution allows us to. Well, who defines what a crime is? And who knows what a crime is now? And who knows what the next politician elected is going to do once that precedent has been set? These bills of rights are involatile, or they should be. And politicians just don't get that, because if they can get a vote, if they can make you throw away your rights and freedoms because they're your hero, they're your savior, then they're going to do that. Then trust me, No politician is going to be your savior and make your life perfect, but they sure will try to convince you of that. Now, in Canada, law and order. Yeah, crime has been an issue. It is always an issue. But I must tell you, I know thousands of Canadians, and most of us are not having our lives impacted dramatically by crime in the streets to the point that we're afraid to walk, afraid to live our lives. There may be improvements we can make, but we don't need to throw everything away for that purpose. Besides, every example ever given shows that getting tough on crime and increasing penalties does nothing to decrease crime rates. Never. Criminals don't think they're going to get caught. They never sit and say, well, if I do this, I'll get this penalty. You increase the penalty, they're still going to do it because they're convinced they can get away with it. There have been examples of 3 strikes laws, minimum mandatory sentences, mandatory life sentences, through the war on drugs, through the Patriots Act, through all kinds of things, and they have not decreased crime. It's a boogeyman, and Poilievre's using it for that. He's out there saying, I will be the tough guy. I will solve all the crime problems. All we have to do is this. No, it is not that simple. And don't fall for it. I was messaging last week with a friend of mine who's very supportive of Poilievre's proposals. His concern really is mass murderers serving one sentence for multiple murders and being back on the street. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He said, it's about eligibility for parole. You kill 6 people and you're only punished for the first killing. Those other lives mean nothing. There should be no chance of parole ever. Actual life in prison. If it takes using this clause to keep liberal judges in check, then so be it. The clause exists for a reason. And that's the kind of argument that you'll get. But let's stop and think about this for a minute. Give me a single example of a mass murderer in Canada who is released and back on the street. Come on. Poilievre has created a crisis where there is not one. His belief that mass murderers are wandering our streets is not true. Now, if you look up, you can find a case that may be that way. Carla Homolka. Carla Homolka was involved with Paul Bernardo, and she was released. But she wasn't released because she was found guilty and convicted of mass murderers. She was released because she made a deal that helped the government convict Paul Bernardo. She cooperated. There would have been no other way they could have possibly gotten Bernardo convicted, the mass murderer, except with her cooperation. Now, that may be right, may be wrong, I don't know, but it's the only case that even comes close to what Poilievre is talking about mass murderers walking the street. Where? And that is the problem. That is when people politicize our fears for their own personal gain. If we're all in agreement that indeed mass murderers should not be paroled, now they shouldn't be out there again. Why not let Poilievre override the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to put that in writing, to put it down as a law? Well, that's where this slippery slope comes in. As I said before, that charter is there for a reason. There's been talk in the past. During the Harper government, there was talk of overriding the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to deal with same-sex marriage and to eliminate it. You never know. It's not a matter of what's going to happen now. It's the precedent that's set and where that can lead you to that we have to be protective of. Look, if you pass Poilievre's law, all you're going to do is save the time and the frustration of a parole hearing where they're not going to grant the person parole anyway. So in order to do that, we're going to throw away our fundamental protection against government and our politicians. No, thank you. That's something I want nothing to do with, and I sincerely hope that you don't either. Hey folks, listen, thank you very much for watching this video. I know I've gone on a bit, but it's an important issue. It's a complicated issue. So, It's election week, or it will be in a week, 1 week tomorrow. Get out there and vote. Make your voice heard. Let's keep Canada the way we want it as our country and not let them Americanize our country. We don't need Trump North in Canada. Thank you very much and have a great week. Here's a few other videos from the channel that you might enjoy. Please like this video. Give me your comments. I love to get your feedback, and subscribe. Thanks a lot and have a great day.